Everyone.
Rabbi.
And what we will do is that, as you remember, we spoke about some questions regarding halacha, community, and and modernity to some extent also. And the question is that we need to ask ourselves, and that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to continue on with those questions, but today we're going to really, I think, reach its peak to some extent, and I'll show you how difficult it is sometimes to be a rabbi. You think it's an easy job. Some people say it's not a good job for a Jewish boy. There's no one else I think that can do it. But basically, this is one of the most difficult topics to talk about, and I decided to share it with you. And basically, what we're going to do is going to learn Gemara, and then I'll raise some questions, and then we see the Natziv. So we have a lot to do today, so let's start without waiting anymore. Here. So last thing we spoke about the idea of what a community needs to do when you have someone who is has issues, who wants to commit some transgressions. So we send him out of the community, we tell him to wear black and this and that and the other. We saw that the last time we met. But now we are going to talk about this topic, הוראה הלכתית לקיום איסור קל יותר, meaning if someone comes to the rabbi and gave the rabbi basically two options. One is terrible, and the other one is a little less terrible. But both of them are prohibited. What the rabbi needs to say. So I just want to make clear again the question. The question is, what do we do when someone comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, look, I know what I'm going to do is not good, but I'm asking you, what's the best? Should I do something which has Isur Deoraita, or I'll do something that may be Isur De Rabbanan, and he's really wanting the rabbi, he or she, they want the rabbi to tell them on something that is basically prohibited, to tell them that that's okay to do. And the rabbi is stuck. I will share with you some questions that we have, but first let's see the source. Where is the source for it? So the source for it is right here. And the Gemara says in Sotah in Daf Memchet, Amar Rav Yosef, Zamrei Gavri ve'anei Nashi Pritzuta, which is, if men sing and women respond in singing, that's called Pritzuta, which means, what is Pritzuta? Pritzuta is like, it's, I will say, what will be the best English word for Pritzut? Will be probably inappropriate. What?
Harmony? You don't mean harmony.
No, it's not harmony. Pritzuta will be exactly the opposite. It's too much of a harmony, but it's a prohibited harmony, which is an inappropriate.
Off, isn't it?
The what?
Showing off.
No. Pritzuta.
Inappropriate behavior.
Inappropriate behavior.
Right. It will be
behavior.
Inappropriate behavior between the genders. So that's one. Zamri Nashi, but if the women sing, Ve'ani Gavri, and the men are responding in singing, Ke'esh beneoret, it's like fire in a field with straw. Lemay nafkamina. So the Gemara says, why do I need to know that? Why do I need to know about all those, what I will call the laws of a choir, of a mixed choir? Okay, why do I need to know it? So the Gemara says, Levitu leha mikameha, to nullify one for the other. What does it mean? Before we even look at Rashi, let's just bring the question, because I want us to think even without Rashi for now. What do we have? We are having two scenarios. We have a mixed choir, or we have some kind of an event. And there are two options. One option is men are singing, women are responding in singing. The Gemara says that's pritzuta, which is inappropriate behavior between the genders. By the way, I'm not passing halacha now, I'm just telling you what the Gemara says. Second scenario, women sing, men respond. What is that? That ke'esh beneoret. That is like fire in the field, okay? Fire in a field that it's filled with thorns. So the Gemara says, "My nafkamina lebituleha mikameha," which means that you need to what? If there is a case where you have these two options and no third option, then the rabbi should know what is worse, what is more severe, and he should advise not to do the more severe one and to do the most lenient one. But they are both inappropriate. Now, here, we are not talking yet about Isur like it's in the Torah, okay, Isur Deoraita. We're talking about Isurei de Rabbanan, obviously, but, or rabbinic prohibitions, but at the same time, we also need to know that we are talking about, obviously, inappropriate behavior between the genders. So the question is, what exactly this Gemara is saying? So if you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says, כאש בנאורת, לפי שהעונה מטה אוזנו לשמוע את המזמר לענות אחריו. It says, because if you want to respond in singing, you need to listen carefully to what the other guy sings. ונמצאו האנשים נותנים ליבם לכל הנשים, וכל באישה ערווה, כי דכתיב השמיעיני את קולך. הוא מבעיר את יצרו כאש בנאורת. אבל זמרי גברי ואניה נשי, קצת פריצות יש. דקול באישה ערווה, אבל אינו מבעיר יצרו כל כך, שהן המזמרים מטים אוזנם לכל העונים. Okay, so Rashi is giving us an analysis of singing, which is very interesting. And by the way, I'll tell you in a minute why I think Rashi knew exactly what he's talking about. So he says like that, when men are singing and the women just respond, so then what do we have? We have something very interesting. When you sing, when you are the solo, when you are the main lead in the singing, now I'm not a good singer, I'm barely a good rabbi, so I'm not a singer, so I don't know exactly how it works. So if someone knows how it works, please let me know. But if you are in singing, and I know, I mean, for sure, when you start singing, you are so into the singing, and you don't really take into consideration the response. And therefore, the men will not really pay attention to the women. Now, it's still inappropriate because they will listen to women singing, which is called by Isha Erva. That's another sugya that has its own ramifications, because hearing a woman singing, it might be an issue, okay, whatever. That's not our issue. That's not our topic. But let's say it's an issue for now. But then, the Gemara says, if the women sing and the men need to respond, so the man needs to what? To listen carefully to the women, and they probably even need to look at them, and they really listen to their voice, and this can entice the man for inappropriate thoughts and inappropriate behavior, and therefore this is terrible. Now,
Can I ask a question?
Before the question, just 1 second.
Okay.
Before the question about the logistic of how exactly does it work, and just in terms of the scenario. So we have one scenario that can lead to esh beneoret, to a fire that will entice the man to have inappropriate thoughts. And then we have one scenario which is not great, but you know what, the rabbis to some extent says, nish geferlech, you know what, if that's what you're going to do, okay, at least the men should lead the singing and the women should only respond. Now, both of them has kol ba'isha erva. Both of them have the issue of kol ba'isha erva, but one is less than the other. So the Gemara says, let's just see Rashi and then I'll take the question. So then Rashi says, לביטולי מקמיה, אם אין שומעים לנו לבטל את שניהם. Don't think that Jews only today say to the rabbi no. Even in the 11th century, in Rashi's time, some people will tell the rabbis, I don't care, we are going to have a mixed choir, or we are going to participate with women in singing. So what should we do? נקדים לבטל את זה כשהוא כאש בנאורת. We as rabbis should really try to do our best to what? To nullify the women singing and men responding, and we will advise them, or we will console them, or we will make a psak for them that the men should sing and the women should respond. Now, before I continue with the analysis of the source, someone wanted to ask a question.
Yeah. What's the difference between Pritzut and Erva?
No, erva is a halachic terminology. Erva relates to kol, se'ar, tefach, inappropriate sexual relationships. That's called erva. Erva might be someone who is marrying one of his siblings. Okay, that's called erva. Erva is an inappropriate sexual relationships. That's the terminology. Pritzuta is the subcategory, which means what can happen in certain cases of erva. Pritzuta, I'm still looking for this English translation for pritzuta. I think there is a word for it. I called it inappropriate sexual behavior between the genders, not necessarily sexual relationships. Just, you know, kirva, closeness, that it's inappropriate. The esh baneoret, that's more, that's like enticing the man to really, they are about to do something that it's wrong, and that we cannot allow. So now, we have something very interesting that we need to discuss, which is, it seems to be, according to the Gemara and according to Rashi, that someone asked me, send me immodesty. It's not so much immodesty. Immodesty is, it's more about not tsanua. Pritzut is a little bit more than that, but we will find a word. So the thing here is that according to the Gemara and according to Rashi, the idea here is what? Is that when a rabbi, when a posek is really dealing with two bad options, he should, and he knows that they're not going to listen to him, which is said something about the community and the rabbi, okay? The community says to the rabbi, we don't really care about what you say. We want your approval for something wrong. I mean, this is the chutzpah. But the rabbi cannot say, I'm not telling you what to do, okay? I'm washing my hands. The rabbi must advise even in such a case, which is very difficult for a rabbi to say. And then the rabbi needs to say, look, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to tell you at least, you know, men singing, women responding, that's a little bit less. Now, obviously, this idea, this principle is very difficult on both ends. And I'm going to share with you some issues that can come out of it. If I was a balabait, not a rabbi, and I know a little bit, which can be dangerous, now I'm giving you dangerous weapon. I'll come to the rabbi and say, Rabbi, how are you doing? I have a question for you. I want to really eat meat and cheese. But you know what? I'm going to eat it. So Rabbi, what is best, cheeseburger or chicken burger? Okay? And Rabbi, I know that chicken and milk, it's on a chicken and cheese or chicken and milk, it's only Rabbanan, and the other one is Deoraita. So Rabbi, what do you think? Now, you can tell me, Rabbi, with all due respect, this one, the rabbi should not say anything. Why? Because the example of the Gemara is not between the Oraita and the Rabbanan. What is the issue of the Gemara, which is very important to know? What is the issue of the Gemara? The issue of the Gemara is both of them are Isur de Rabbanan. Both of them is a rabbinic prohibition. One of them can lead to something totally inappropriate, and one of them can lead to what? To something that is a little bit less inappropriate. This is our case. This is what we call in Hebrew Tchumei Gizra, which means what? It means what? It means that you have what should I say? You know, if the question is not in those limits, in those boundaries, the rabbi should excuse himself. However, some rabbis can learn this Gemara and say this is what's just a prototype. This is what's just an example of what? Of a case when the rabbi needs to make a decision between two wrong things, but it also applies with other things. So that's a question. So that's question number one. Then there is a question number two. Can a person take advantage on it and say, look, I know I want to do something that it's not great, But you know what? I can do something worse. Therefore, I'm going to go to the rabbi, and I'm going to ask the rabbi, I'm going to be a good Jew. I'm going to go and ask the rabbi, and then I will what? I will basically get an approval for something that is what? That it's wrong. Now, I'll add a third question. Before I look at the chat, I see some people said things in the chat, and then I will open it for a short discussion. What happens when you have people who they are beginning to become more religious, but they still have, chevra, they still have a society, friends, and things like that, not exactly are keeping it. And let's say they want to make an event, and they make it kosher, but they want to have a corner which is not exactly kosher. I'm not talking about treif, but not exactly kosher. And they ask the rabbi, can we have it in the event? And it's very important for them. They have many friends who are not religious, and maybe some of them even are not Jewish, and they want to treat them nicely, and they want to have a corner of this event which will serve non-kosher food. Can you allow it? Can the rabbi participate in it? Now I hear a lot of silence, and I think it's because you are muted, but now it's time to have a short discussion, and then I would like to unmute and go back to the source sheets. But one second. I will give it a few minutes of discussion, because I think I raised some questions that I want to hear your opinion on. So we'll have like a 5-minute discussion. So please, who would like to speak?
I think you get into an awful lot of problems. First, as a rabbi, if you go into a place that is partially kosher or it's not kosher, you're going in for whatever reason, it gives an aura that everything is okay, and it really is a bad example to set. Nowadays, there's enough foods that you can buy that are totally kosher that cover all the spectrums of whatever taste people need. So it's a different issue.
Okay, yeah, I'm not focusing so much on the rabbis attending the event. I'm talking more about the rabbi allowing that event to happen and basically saying that will be okay.
Yes.
Go into a non-kosher place.
I remember a question that came up many years ago where a rabbi was asked, I'm going to be driving anyway. Is it okay for me to drive to shul? Because if not, then I'm going to be driving somewhere else. I think that may be something that you want to address.
Okay, yes, Paul? Unmute.
Is there a difference between a private individual or a community? For example, is it a community event which is supported by the community, or a private, like the previous person asked about the driving a car on Shabbat? Now the flip side is, will the event occur with or without the rabbi's approval?
Okay, very good. So if not, no one else wants to add, I want to basically, I brought all those questions to you in order to get you thinking. Why I want to do that? Because, and I don't need personal stories or personal examples. What I want to look at that from, as we say, a priori, meaning I want to look at that from afar. I want to see the question, not the details of the question. What I want to see is I want to discuss the principle of midcheha mikamea, which means to nullify when there is a problem of not being able as a rabbi to cancel an event or an action or an activity that it's not appropriate. And there are two options: to let the person know, you know what, just take the other one. That obviously puts the rabbi in a very odd situation, very problematic one, very complicated one, but also puts the balebatim in a somewhat of an advantage, knowing that, there is always something worse that I can do, Rabbi. So, maybe you should allow me to do what I ask you that I can. So this is where the issues are, and that's what we're going to do. In order to illustrate it, and then we might have a longer discussion, I want to bring you, share with you a question which is very, very problematic. And it is from the 19th century. Don't think that those issues came only up in the 21st century. Already in the 19th century, there is a very fascinating question that the Netziv is answering. So let's see together. Just if everyone, you know what, let me just mute everyone. Okay. Okay, so the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, 19th century. He was born 1817, passed away 1893. And the question is the following. באתי לפני הדרת כבוד תורתו, לשאול מפיו המפיק תבונה שאלה בדבר השם זו הלכה, והיא למעשה. ובעוז חוכמתו יוציא דת נאמנה, וזאת היא. Okay, so he's giving him a nice introduction that how smart he is, and he's asking the Netziv a question. What's the question? אישה אחת חשודה על איסור נידה, ופעמים רבות חטאה במעל ובעלה כמוה. So we are having a woman who many times didn't go to the mikveh when she needed. Or she said she did and she didn't. And her husband is like her, which means he cooperates with her. He cares less if she goes, if she doesn't go, whatever. Okay? By the way, we are talking about a couple, a family, that is probably somewhere, maybe was outside of the community and now comes into the community, or maybe they were in the community and she said, look, I didn't go to the mikveh. And her husband cooperated with her. אך כעת עבר עליו רוח טהרה, should be עליה. Okay? Now she became more religious. ונתעורר חפץ בקרבה לטבול מגאולה במים טהורים. So now she wants to go to the mikveh. But אך לא ברגש קודש. But not necessarily in a pure way or in a holy way. כי ממאי אם חטאת יצאה בת בושת לחרפה לה, לטבול בלילה את טבילת נשים רבות הכשרות, אך אם יותר לה לטבול ביום את אשר אין נשים בבית המרחץ, אז תשמור דת הטבילה כאשר יינתן צו עליה, וספרה וטבלה יום ח' לספירתה, ואם לא נתיר לה, אז תוסיף לחטוא כימים עברו. Okay. First, before we deal with anything, what do we need to do? We need to understand the question, right? Without understanding the question, there is nothing to talk about. So what is the question? So the question is like that. Here is a woman who is not careful in attending a mikveh. Okay, she's not going. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. Most of the time she doesn't. Her husband don't care. Okay, that's going on for a few years. Then this woman, she's decided she wants to be more religious. Okay, wonderful, that's great. But she is not doing that exactly because she found the light, okay? I guess she's doing that maybe because of other interests. That's my guess. It doesn't say it in the she'elah, in the question, but it's my guess because there is a hint. She doesn't do it becherdat kodesh. She's not doing that from necessarily only pure and holy motives. And how do we know that? Because she said, I don't want to what? To go to the mikveh at night. I'm embarrassed from all the other ladies. If the other ladies will see me in the mikveh, they say, what are you doing here? You know, it's always like that. When a Jew doesn't come to shul and he comes only once a year, the first question he gets is what? What are you doing here? Instead of saying, welcome, Baruch haba, good to see you, it's what are you doing here? So the same thing here. She'll go to the mikveh, and the women there will tell her, Ma את עושה פה? What are you doing here? And she will be embarrassed. So she says, look, allow me, Rabbi, to go to the mikveh during the day, the 8th day in the morning. I'll go in the morning. Instead, and if you will allow me to go in the morning this time, I'll keep it every time. That's a good question, no? You have a woman who doesn't go to the mikveh, so now she is isur nida leba'ala, she's isur nida to her husband. And she said, from now on, we will not have that prohibition anymore. We will live together in a holy and pure way, but just allow me at least once to go on the 8th day in the morning instead of the 7th night. So now, hold on. Obviously, what's the problem? What are we talking about? What's the question? So instead of going at night, she'll go in the morning. No, beseder, so what? What's the problem of going to the mikveh on the 8th day in the morning? Why we don't allow it? Does anyone know? Okay.
We're afraid that she might sleep with her husband on the 7th night.
Okay, that might be. That's true. But let's say that we are not taking. That's not one of the major reasons. We are not that choshesh for that. There is one other option. It's called chashash srach. Feigi.
I was just going to say, this is a private action, and that's why it's done at night, so you shouldn't be seen by others.
Okay.
Going and coming.
Okay, so there is the sense of privacy, and also it's the idea of it's called chashash srach bita. We established the fact that she needs to go at night, because of privacy, and also what David I think said is that she can be with her husband on that night instead of schlepping it for the next day. So what we are doing here is that we are telling her you can go in the morning. And also, if the daughter will see that she goes in the morning, she would think that you can even go in the morning on the 7th day, not the 8th day. That's the main issue. The main issue is that if you go at night, no one would think that you can go the night of the 6th night, because everyone knows to count 7, okay? So therefore, if you see someone goes and the 8th day in the morning, you would think that maybe on the 7th day you can already You can go to the mikveh. And therefore we say 7th at night, which is basically like the 8th. You are with me with that, because that's very important. Okay, so she is asking to basically go on the 8th day in the morning, which is basically chashash de Rabbanan, that she should not go. So she's putting me, the rabbi, Baruch Hashem, it was not me, it was the Natziv, okay? He has much larger shoulder than Natziv. I never saw him, but I can assume halachically. And he had to deal with what question? Question of to allow a woman to violate a rabbinic prohibition, a rabbinic concern. So she, at least that's what she said, that's what she committed to do, that she will start going to the mikveh regularly at night, and she will keep nida as she should. That's the question. Difficult one. So let's see what the Natziv says. והנה, כתב מפורש יוצא מכל הפוסקים ודברי הגמרא על לשונם, כי אף ביום ח' או ט' לספירתה אסורה לטבול ביום, here, that's what I said, גזירה משום סרח ביתה. So everywhere we know that, one second, what's going on here? One second, sorry. Okay. Srach bita, as we said, that the daughter of that woman would think that you are allowed to go even on the 7th day morning instead of the 8th day morning. אך באישה הזאת יש לחקור אם מותר לבית דין להתיר לה לטבול ביום ותחטא חטא קל, she will commit a slight or a light sin violating the rabbi's concern, שלא תבוא לחטוא חטא כרת החמור, או אף חוב מוטל על הבית דין להתיר לה לטבול ביום, כיוון שידוע מחזקת טומאתה, שבאם לא תטבול ביום, לא תטבול כלל ותתגאל באיסור. ואף את בעלה תטמא ותכרות ימה ואוהב וקצת כאנוס. ואם תטבול ביום ותטהר מטומאתה, אז יהיה בעלה נקי מפשע, ולא תישא היא עלה ועליה חטא כרת החמור, אך עליה רביע איסור דרבנן שעברה על גזירתן. So what do we have here? So the Netziv is now asking few questions. Question number one, should the Beidin be matir to that woman to go and to violate is chashash derabanan, isur derabanan? Question number one. Question number two, should the Beidin is mechuyav, is obligated to tell her, go. Sure, you should go. Why? Because even though you are violating what? You are violating isur derabanan, still you are metzila, you are saving your husband and yourself from what? From isur karet, from a terrible punishment. So that's the question. Now, someone wrote in the chat, I think no-brainer, but it is, I'm sorry, but it is a very complicated issue. Because there are few issues, and I think Paul mentioned that at the beginning, we are dealing also with the communal issue.
Yeah, that's
Just imagine that that lady has a mouth, okay? And she is having a kiddush in honor of her going back to the mikveh. And she's, throwing a kiddush, and there is no corona, and everyone comes and she gives a bit of speech, and she says, I would like to thank Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who allowed me to go to the mikveh on the 8th day in the morning. That was a wonderful experience. There were no other women in the mikveh. It was clean, nice, and I got all the attention. Thank you, Rabbi. Can you imagine what the other women are going to say? Can you imagine what it can cause to Taharat HaMishpacha in Berlin, which was, by the way, complicated by itself? So the idea here, Peggy, I'm taking you in a minute. I saw your hand. What I'm saying here is that the Netziv is obviously dealing with a very complicated issue. So before we continue, Peggy first, Paul second. So Peggy, bevakasha.
Okay, I think in this case, a little bit of psychological counseling has to be given first. And then you don't have the problem. If this woman, as you said at the beginning, and you stated the problem, she's worried that other people will make fun of her or will say, what are you doing here, etc., etc. She needs psychological counseling to be reassured that what she is doing is proper, and she shouldn't pay attention to people who talk, whatever psychological counseling is. And I think that there should be no leniency.
Okay. So
but
Peggy,
there has to be counseling.
Okay, so Peggy says, this is really not a question for the rabbi, it's a question for a psychologist. After she goes to the psychologist, if she still thinks like that, so I don't know, maybe she needs to go to a place. But if not, then it's not a halachic question, because the halacha should say no. That's what Peggy says. Now, I don't know, even though Freud, I think, was already around, in that time. I don't know, when was Freud? 20th century, beginning of 20th century?
He was going into the mikveh then, Rabbi. He didn't have time to answer the question.
Okay. But I don't know if he was there or not there, whatever it is. But the idea is, so he says, basically, Peggy says, it should be an answer. It should be no. And tell her, don't be embarrassed. It will be okay. God will bless you with wonderful children. Talmidei Chachamim. Go ahead. Okay, Paul.
First of all, I agree with Peggy. Number one. Number two, B'chol Mikra is a community issue, because the rabbi, even Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, didn't have the keys to the mikveh. That means he had to go and ask the VAR to arrange for the mikveh to be open, and it's already an issue. It's already, and like Tziporim, the people are starting to talk about it. Oh, it's open on Thursday morning. Why?
So basically, Paul is raising the communal issue that, opening up a mikveh in the morning, it might be an issue, whatever it is. But look what you are doing. You are going around, and all the things that you said, I will take into consideration, and we need to take into consideration. But still, the first question that no one here is daring to answer. Peggy says you should say no. But basically, the thing here is that this is an exact question like the Gemara in Sota, but it's even more. If you remember, one of my questions at the beginning of the shiur was, to what extent are we taking this Gemara? This Gemara, at least in the time of the Natziv, and we will see how he's going to use it, is basically talking to him about violating what Isur de Rabbanan in order to save herself and her husband from Isur de Oraita. That's the question that we are dealing with. Okay, so before we go back to the Natziv, I think Shir raised their hand. So Shir, bevakasha.
About the Kiddush fear, I think in this situation at least, there's not really a fear of that, because we heard the whole reason that she doesn't want to do it at night is because היא מתביישת that she is starting now. So היא לא תפתח עכשיו Kiddush לכבוד, oh, I'm starting now.
Okay, so Shir says that maybe we should not be so concerned about Kiddush, but I just use that as an example of women talk, men talk, rabbis talk, and that's what Paul's concern. You know what? At the end of the day, עוף השמיים יוליך את הכל, ובעל כנפיים יגד דבר. Okay, that's the pasuk in Kohelet. People talk at the best secret at the end of the day is going to be somehow revealed, and that can cause the issues. So that's the questions that we have. By the way, many years ago, for me it's many, I'm still young, but let's say 30 years ago, you see in Safrut HaShutim, in questions and answers of the rabbis, talking about women going to mikveh with nails, with the gel, whatever it's called, lac, what do you call it, that you put on the fingers? Gel?
Nail varnish.
Nail polish.
Nail polish, thank you very much. Okay, so the question was, can a woman go with a nail polish, a professional nail polish, to the mikveh, not to go, yes to go? 30, 40 years ago, that was, no, wow, it was a big deal. In today's shooting, many of them, and I'm not talking about, lefties, or many of them, allowing it in this way and other, especially with kala and things like that. There are more leniency. So again, sometimes a rabbi could be presented with, Rabbi, if you tell me to take off the nail polish, I'm not going to the mikveh. Ma osim. Okay? So those are the issues, especially with kalot. Okay, because they need to go first to the manicure, pedicure, 2 days before the wedding, so it will last. And now today, we have other issues of permanent makeup. A woman can say to the rabbi, look, if you will not allow me a permanent makeup because I want to stay pretty, whatever it is, and I can, if that's called chatzitza in the mikveh, and if you will not allow it to me, I will not go to the mikveh. Baruch Hashem, we have full plate. We have, we, Baruch Hashem, have work until Mashiach comes. And even after he comes, I'm sure we'll have questions. Is he the real Mashiach? Is not the real Mashiach? Is that a real donkey, not a real donkey? No, Bezrat Hashem, Bezrat Hashem shenizkeh, that we will have those questions. But the idea is, going back and being serious now, is that the Natziv needs to make a decision. So what is his decision? So let's see. Let me just mute, so we'll go back to it. Here. Okay. So he says like that, כלל הדבר שבכזאת ודאי מתירים לה לעבור על חטא קל. Can you see that, by the way?
No.
Oh, you can't. Sorry. Yeah, I knew something is wrong here. Oops. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. כלל הדבר שבכזאת מתירים לה לעבור על חטא דרבנן קל דרבנן, כדי שלא תפשע על ידי עצת יצרה מאנסה באיסור כרת החמור בעצמה. So we're going to be lenient, and we're going to allow her to go to the mikveh on the 8th day in the morning. לבד שתזכה את בעלה, so she can also help her husband not to violate איסור כרת, שאם תטבול ביום, אז יהיה נקי משום חטא. אך אחרי כל זה, אף אם נאמר דהה דחטא בשביל שתזכה היא, רק אם נסובבה סיבה אשר על ידי כן יחטא איזה חטא, הוא יעשה דבר שלא כדת הנכון כמו במנחות. ואם יחטא יעשה איזה מצווה מוטלת עליו, אבל בנידון דידן דאין מי שיכריחנה, שתחטא שום חטא בעולם, היא יכולה לקיים מצוות השם כהלכתה או כתקנתה, רק היא תחפוץ תעבור על איסור דרבנן, ואם תעבור ותחטא לא תזכה בשום מצווה, ולא תנצל מחטא אשר בלא זה תפשע בו בהכרח, I will translate in a minute, רק הכל ברצונה וחפץ עשותה, וכזאת לא מתירין לעבור מקודם על איסור דרבנן, כדי שלא תחטא ברצונה על איסור דאורייתא. So he says like that. And Fagi and Paul and everyone else who contributed, we are dealing exactly with those issues. On one hand, the Netziv says, look, I think Benny says it's a no-brainer. Obviously, Isur de Rabbanan, it's not even Isur de Rabbanan, it's a concern of the Rabbanan. Yes, it's somewhat of an Isur de Rabbanan. So obviously, you allow her to violate it once, so now she will be muteret leba'ala. There will be no Isur karet, there will be now prohibition of cutoff, of karet. And from now on, she's going to be religious and everything will be great. So sure, no-brainer. But on the other hand, who is forcing her not to go to the mikveh until now? She herself. She did it to herself. And as Peggy says, that the fact that she has psychological issues of what people will say about her, that's her issues. That's nothing to do with halacha. Why should I, as a rabbi, get my hands dirty and allow you to violate the Rabbanan, Isur de Rabbanan, because of your, excuse my French, meshigas? Why should I do that? Why do you put me in such a situation that I need to allow you something that I'm totally not comfortable with? And I will need to explain it. You have issues, go to see someone and then go to the mikveh like every other Jewish woman. Especially when now you are becoming more religious and you want to be more observant, so show it to me. But the Netziv says with his incredible wisdom, he says, מכל מקום כאן יש להקל ולהתיר לה מטעמן דלאל. דאף אם נחמיר בשאר איסור וגזרה דרבנן, ודווקא בגזרה שנגזרה בבית דין הגדול במניין, והסמוכו עליו דלא תסור. ובטהרת אישה, כגון באישה רוצה לטבול בחציצה במיעוט המקפיד עליו, ובמקווה חסרה מם שאה שנפלו בתוכה ג' וג' שובים, ואם לאו לא תטבול כלל, בכזה אפשר באמת אין מתירים דגזרה מוסכמת היא, והוטבעו לאו דלא תסור. לבד שיש לחלק בחציצה ובמקווה שהוא בגוף המצווה כגון דין חמור עלן. ובזה יש לומר אינו ראוי מדרבנן ואינו ראוי מן התורה. מה שאין כן כאן, דאינו בגוף עשיית המצווה הוא רק גזרה בזמן. So then he says, look. One second, where did it go? Okay, he says, look, here we need to be lenient. Why? Because it says, look, what is the Isur? So, for example, if we know that a woman should not go to the mikveh with something, even if it's mi'uta makpid alav, which means there need to be no chatzitza when a woman goes to the mikveh. But let's say, again, in the time of the Netziv, it was very machmir about, let's say, nail polish, okay? Mi'uta makpid alav, okay? She says, look, Rabbi, if you're not allowing me to go with the nail polish into the mikveh, I'm not going to the mikveh. Should the rabbi say okay or not? So 30, 40 years ago, the rabbi would say no. Why? Because this is what they call guf ha'maaseh. You want me to be matir to you something that has a big sugya in the Gemara, a few sugyot in the Gemara, about what constitutes chatzitza, what doesn't constitute chatzitza, which is really separate between you and the tvilah itself, the immersion in the mikveh. I can't do that. The prohibition of not going to the mikveh on the 8th day in the morning is what's the nature of the prohibition? The prohibition is on the time. The time that if you will not go to the mikveh at night, you will change the time. Changing the time can lead to, it will be misleading to other people that will see you. Therefore, it's not as part of what? Of the tvilah itself, of the immersion itself. It's external. And therefore, says the Netziv, in this case, the rabbi should be lenient. And then, he says, הרי דלכתחילה הסכימו להתיר לטבול ביום לכל נשי העיר מפני איזה סיבה הוא שעת הדחק, ותקנה קראו לה, והוא שלא יבטלו ממצוות פריה ורבייה כמו שמצינו בריש נידה. וכן הקלו הפוסקים בזה, ואם עברה וטבלה אין צריך כלל אף טבילה פעם אחרת. If she did go without asking a rabbi on the 8th day in the morning, she doesn't need to go to the mikveh again. ולכן, באישה כזו דייצרה אלבשה, in this woman that has this inclination, ואנסה לעבור בקום ועשה על איסור כרת היא ובעלה, and she didn't go to the mikveh until now, or she went and didn't go, וכבר זה נתחזקו להתפתות לו, אין לחשת הדחק גדול מזה, ולכן ודאי יש להתיר בזה להציל אותה וכל שכן בעלה האנוס קצת מאיסורי כרת. So the Natziv, and before we're going to open up a discussion, the Natziv is basically saying, look, he goes like that. He says, first we have Isur Karet, the Oraita, Isur de Rabbanan, going to the mikveh on the 8th day in the morning. Okay, what do we do? So obviously we are going to want to try to be lenient on Isur de Rabbanan, so the Isur de Oraita will be fulfilled. Okay? Midcheha, mikameha. One thing. Second, 1 second. Let's analyze this Isur de Rabbanan. Why isn't that allowed to go on the 8th day to the mikveh? Generally. Answer, srach bita. The daughter will not know exactly what's going on, and she will think that you are allowed to go to the mikveh even on the 7th day in the morning. Then obviously she is not muteret to go to the mikveh. Therefore, she needs to go at night. Okay. Then he says, 1 second, I understand it. So it's obviously a valid concern. However, when I look at Isurei de Rabbanan, when it comes to Tvila, I know that I need to make a distinction between different sorts of Isurim. There is Isurim, there are rabbinic prohibitions, which are fully connected, interconnected with the Tvila itself. For example, if a woman says to you, look, Rabbi, I'm not going to go to the mikveh that has 40 se'ah. I want only 39 se'ah and to pour into it with some pitcher. Obviously, the rabbi can tell her, I'm sorry, a mikveh is 40 se'ah, מים שאובים. It's not מים שאובים, it should be מים טהורים, מים חיים. That I cannot allow you. A woman says, look, Rabbi, you know what, I want to immerse in the mikveh, to go into the mikveh with a robe. Sorry, you can't do it. But when it comes to the fact that she went on the 8th day, this is a prohibition that relates to time. The timing. She's already muteret on the 7th night. So basically from the Torah, she should go last night. Now she had this meshigas, she's embarrassed, she's this and that, but the Isur de Rabbanan is not interrelated to the Tvila itself. And therefore, it's less severe than any other rabbinic prohibition that relates to the mikveh. And if we will be lenient with that, she committed herself, or at least she said, that she's going to go at nights from now on and not in the morning. And she will not be over, she will not violate Isur Karet, and she will not put her husband in a very difficult position, because the husband, as you see, he's not going to divorce her. So if she doesn't go to the mikveh, he's going to be with her. She's also, or is also over al Isur Karet. So basically, we will allow her to go on the 8th day. So basically, what do we have here? The rabbi allowed that woman to violate Isur de Rabbanan. Isur de Rabbanan Kal, a light one, so-called. So she will not be over on Isur de Oraita. Now, before we allowing our imagination to go wild and to prepare a list of questions for me, you know, Rabbi, can I do this? If not, I'll do that, you know, because I'm not going to answer those questions. I'm going to mute you all. But being serious, let's, again, especially when sometimes, rabbis or people like to quote a tshuva and to expand it. Don't go wild, because the Netziv talked about a one-time deal. He goes to the mikveh in the morning on the 8th day, and from now on she will go at night. That's one. B, it's only if we cannot really, convince her. She said, I will not do it. If you can convince her, obviously that's what you need to do. So don't go wild and say, oh, now I can do whatever I want, because there is always something worse that I can do. So it's very limited, but still exists, which is very important. Meaning, even though I don't want to expand it and to take it, to all sorts of fields right now, or topics, but still the fact that we have a tshuva like that, and that we having a leading rabbi in the 19th century, leading rabbi, who is allowing that based on the Gemara that we mentioned before, the Gemara in Sotah, and his own analysis, said something with tremendous importance to our major topic. Don't forget our initial topic. Our initial topic is Halacha Kehila Moderna. We have a question here that has tremendous ramifications vis-a-vis the individuals, the rabbi and the person who asked. And then we also have, and then we also have what? We also have the issue of community. I can guarantee you that people would know that that woman went to the mikveh in the morning. Not only because they read the shoot of the Netziv after he's dead. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking the minute he told her yes, the mikveh lady knows that she needs to be there in the morning. And the cleaner needs to know that he needs to come also in the afternoon to clean up for what he cleaned again. And then someone will see her. And then she will go out with wet hair, and someone will tell her, what are you doing? I can assure you that people would know. And he was willing to take the risk in order to allow her to go to the mikveh from now on at nights and not to violate Isur Karet. So I know that many of you have something to ask, so I will do a gallery view and I will be able to hear your questions and see you all. Okay, anyone has a question or suggestion or an idea that wants to share? Harold, bevakasha.
So it would seem, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That based on what the Netziv is saying, that the first level of understanding is that just like with the nail polish and going to the mikvah, you're not yotzei. You're not yotzei the mitzvah of going to the mikvah. So he cannot allow somebody to do something where in fact they wouldn't be yotzei. But if she went to the mikvah on the 8th day, b'di'eved, is she yotzei in terms of mikvah? He's probably saying she is yotzei b'di'eved, even though it's not the best thing to do, but you are yotzei. So that has to be the first level of consideration, that the person must still be yotzei in the mitzvah. And then if that requirement is fulfilled, then other considerations can go from there, I would say. The other thing I just wanted to say, I came in, was it mentioned who is sponsoring today's learning?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, so Harold, for the first thing that you said, yes, exactly. That's exactly the analysis of the Netziv, saying that is the issue, the prohibition to go on the 8th day in the morning is external to the Tvilah, which is, if she did it, she fulfilled her obligation. And by the way, there is a story in the Gemara that says that it was a time of dchak, a time of fear and concern for the women to go at night because of pogroms and all sorts of things. And the rabbis allowed them to go in the morning, obviously.
No, but Rav Shai, in this case, didn't the woman ask the Rav the Netziv whether she could go to the mikveh? It wasn't be diavad. It was the chadchila. She asked him, "Can I go in the morning?"
Yeah, no. What Harold said, it was not diavad. The case was diavad. He says that let's say a woman went to the mikveh on the 8th day in the morning without asking anyone. She just, whatever.
Okay.
She was, and so then the tvilah is okay, but diavad is okay. Yeah, but diavad is okay. She didn't know, whatever, she went, she doesn't need to go get back to the mikveh. Yes, anyone else?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to just come back to the first example you gave to just ask for some clarity. We talked about men singing and women answering, and women singing and men answering, both of which are not permissible. You're not saying that the rabbi is going to say to them, well, if you've got a choice, go ahead and do the less permissible one. Shouldn't the rabbi say, quite clearly, they are both forbidden, but if you're going to do one of them, then the least worst option is the one with the men singing, the women answering. Is that what should the rabbi actually say?
Yeah, that's exactly what, if you go here, that's exactly what we started with. What Rashi says here, we tell them, both of them are inappropriate, but they don't listen to us. So we will go ahead first and tell them, this one you can't do. But we are telling them that both of them, we want you to nullify both of them, shnehem. Both of them is not good. Yeah, that's exactly what Rashi says. And by the way, I think that part of the issue here is that, there were choirs in church. And there was, I guess, will be men and women and whatever it is. That's just an assumption. And Jews, also wanted to do something very similar. By the way, not in the 11th century, but in the 17th century, in the time of 18th century, in the time of the Khatam Sofer, there is a famous question of the Khatam Sofer, who was asked, the Caesar of the Austro-Hungarian Empire came to visit in the shul of the Khatam Sofer. And the question was, he was asked, can women sing when he comes in? And the men, to do like a mixed choir. And why? Because in every other church that the Caesar of the Austro-Hungarian Empire comes, so obviously there is a beautiful singing of men and women. And he says, no, he comes to a Jewish place. He needs to know that we are different, and therefore the women should not even behind the mechitza and whatever. It's a very interesting teshuva. I'm not giving now a halachic opinion on that because that is not obviously the purpose of the shiur, and I will not do it because each case is different. But that's the very famous teshuva of the Khatam Sofer. So basically, what we have here is that definitely we need to try to convince them to drop it at all. The problem is when they're not going to drop it, which makes it difficult because on one hand, if you know that something is wrong or it's not as good as it should, why do you come to ask me? Just do whatever you want. Why do you want to ask the rabbi? What? Well, if you, God forbid, have, cholesterol, do you call the doctor before you take your Lipitor to ask him if you can eat the chocolate cake? I mean, come on, right? You're not going. You should not supposed to eat the chocolate cake. We have Dr. Natalie Gross. Okay, doctor. The people call you before they do something wrong, knowing, oh yeah, oy vey. So we are in the same business. So I guess it's human nature. They ask. Look, there is some psychological issue in terms of people, even though they know it's wrong, they want to have some kind of an approval, some kind of an affirmation that it's not that bad. So as a doctor, you're probably going to say, you know what, if you do it only once, no, nish gefährlich. And I'm as a rabbi, or as the Natziv says, you know what, if you go to the mikveh once in the 8th day in the morning, after that you will go do it at night, no, beseder. Look, we can look at that, and this is, I think, the beauty of halacha. On one hand, there is definitely a very rigid side to halacha. It is what it is, but at the same time, halacha has flexibility in it, which I think it's beautiful. There is a lot of flexibility, and I'm not talking about flexibility just because I'm a sensitive guy, I'm empathetic, sympathetic, I'm a nice guy. It's not about being nice, being sympathetic. It's about in the sources themselves. There is a lot of flexibility that needs to be shaped, and we need to know how to learn it. But you see how the Natziv And again, the Netziv had a tremendous status. I don't know how many of you knows about his life and about what he accomplished. Not only, the Volozhin Yeshiva, okay? I'm talking about his perushim on the She'iltot, on the Chumash, on Tanakh. I mean, what he wrote and what he led was a revolution. And he was not afraid. He was not afraid to what? To say his opinion, and obviously to publish it, and to allow something like that. So, any more questions before we conclude? Yes, Paul? You need to unmute, Paul. Paul, you need to unmute.
I'm thinking of the Gemara in Sotah, which was written in Bavel. In Eretz Yisrael, when there was a Bet Mikdash, there was a choir and there was an Ezrat Nashim. In the 20th century, moving forward, it's become accepted in modern Orthodox shuls for community singing. Okay, now looking at, from my perspective, who's raised the issue was the Talmud Bavli. Okay, there wasn't an issue. I'm thinking out loud, and maybe I'm wrong. There wasn't an issue in Eretz Yisrael, and then 2,000 years later, in the 20th century, we suddenly allow singing again in a bet tefillah or a bet knesset.
So there is a bit of a difference. Don't forget, we are talking about communal singing, not someone sings and someone responds. We have a communal singing. So that's the problem that Rashi at least specified was the listening carefully, and looking. That does not happen in communal singing. That's A. Now, your distinction between, it started in Bavel and not in Eretz Israel, that I cannot answer because we really need to have an expert, a historian really, to tell us about the environment in Bavel. Was that something very common among the non-Jewish society when women and men sang and the Jews also wanted to do it? That I don't know. I mean, I can make up assumptions, but they will not be accurate. So I cannot really respond to the second one.
What about the men singing in the Bet HaMikdash?
But that was okay. I mean, men sang that they were the Levim, and if the women participated or not, we don't know. I mean, the fact that there was a woman section does not mean that they sang. I mean, I don't know. It might be.
Also, the women weren't always there. We
What?
know, like it wasn't really an Ezrat Nashim. It was sometimes it was with Nashim, sometimes it was with just other.
Yeah, I agree. It was not exactly that. Not exactly operated like what we have in shul. Phil, I think you raised your hand too.
I'm going to defer first to my wife.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say, Rabbi, that I'm going back to the mikveh case. I think the most significant thing you said were the social circumstances at the time, which might have very strongly influenced the opinion. Had it not been for those social circumstances, then I think it would have been really not an acceptable opinion because of the point that we made before of other social circumstances that would arise by people knowing that she was going in the morning. So those are two separate issues, but they're related. And the next thing is that if she was going to go at night from then on, why did she need the morning to start off?
No, because she said that the first time she was. Oh, sorry. What did I do here?
You're fine.
I'm fine. I don't see myself. Okay. New computer, and I thought I'm young. I don't know how to operate it. Okay. So I'll need to ask, I guess, someone else, someone younger than me to help me. But the thing here is that she said that the first time she's going back to the mikveh, she wants to do it privately. That's what basically she said. Look, obviously, technical solutions I could find here. I could tell her, look, come at 11:30 at night. I'll make sure that no one is there, and you will go through, the back door. But she didn't want to. Obviously, it seems to be an extreme question. So I don't know if it's a made-up question just to get up a principle, a halachic principle, or it was a question in reality, and there was no any other technical solution. It might also be. I don't know. And I also agree with you. It also depends on the circumstances. Maybe in different circumstances it was not allowed. Yes, that's true. Phil, you also had a question?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the topic itself. The issue, it's nice to deal with the problem of a one-off person and one-off circumstances. But today, for example, you have the Israeli army, and there is a choir singing, and it's really do the soldiers have to march out if it's a mixed choir, or if women are singing, if they're good enough to be in the army and put their lives on the line, just like the men. The men should walk out when women sing, or even come. I'd be interested to hear a broader view, because basically we really cannot go back to what happened 1,000 years ago. Society is different.
Mhm. So what you are saying, it's true in terms of society. This is true. I will tell you that the question, I'll take your question and I'll break it to pieces. I'm sorry. Meaning the fact that the women are good to serve in the army and all of that, and they are bad, that's an emotional claim. Okay? The fact that, they can do many things and they can save my life, wonderful. But then there is the question of halacha. So let's separate them. Now, there is a question, should a religious soldier leave an event because there is mixing? Okay, that's the question. That's a halachic question. And like every other halachic question, you will get 10,000 opinions. Some people will tell you, yes, he should, because he shouldn't be there. Some people will tell you this is not such a big deal, especially if he doesn't really listen. And even if he listens, they sing together on this and that and the other. So I think that the answer that will be given to a question like that will be very much dependent on how the rabbi who answers the question see the entire ma'arechet. I can look at that question as a religious soldier versus mixed choir. I can look at that as how can I bring a harmony between religious soldiers, observant soldiers, and the general society, and the non-observant society, serving in the only army that we have together. So it depends on where I'm coming from a more of a national perspective that will probably influence also my religious or my halachic decision. You with me?
I'm with you, but I'm wondering, social circumstances have changed. Women do not today in our society have the same inhibitions or negativities that we have today. So it's not a question. So if you say halacha is timeless, unchangeable, rigid, tough luck ladies, and that's how it is, but if you're very good, I won't tell on you. That's one approach. The other approach is to acknowledge that the role of the woman in society today has changed. And that's halachically.
I think many rabbis accept it, embrace it, encourage it, understand it, allowing it. But still, even if you take the most lefty rabbi, there are certain things he can change. No, I don't think any rabbi will include a woman in a minyan as part of a minyan.
That's
making her a minyan. So there are many things. Allowing reading in the Torah and leading some parts of service and all of that.
Or
what?
Kaddish.
I can't hear you.
I said saying Kaddish.
Saying Kaddish, but saying Kaddish, it's not really, saying Kaddish, it's not being part of the minyan. She can say the Kaddish. That's, many rabbis allowing it and so I don't want to go, specific rabbis or specific shuls because I don't want to make it political. But going back to your answer, a lot of your halachic decision is obviously influenced also on your, I don't want to call it political, but on your, I will call general values.
Yeah.
And this is something that you will see definitely between different rabbis that will influence their halachic decision. So obviously we can speak about this issue really for the entire day. It's a fascinating issue, and it comes really every day, not all day, but every day. So Bezrat Hashem, we will continue on. I want to wish you all Shabbat Shalom. Torot Tovot. Again, we are, I guess, going to a seger, so at least the Zoom continues on without a seger, so we can continue to learn Torah. Everyone who would like to participate in the shiur tonight at shul, which is just 1 second. I'll put it on the chat here. That's the link for tonight's shiur at 8 p.m. for the Midrash shiur that I give. So everyone have a wonderful week and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much.